Welcome to this week's episode of the Crazy Catholics Podcast. I'm your host, Giada, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Raph. In today's episode, we are diving into the topic of music and how it's becoming more devilish with the evolution of the music industry as a whole. But before we get into it, let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
All right, as tradition, we do have verse of the day. It's kind of weird of me saying this instead of Gigi, but I digress. It is prayer. So, from the scripture for today we share, it's from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 18 through 20. It says, "Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with all your heart, always and for everything giving thanks in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ to God the Father." This verse reminds us to use our gifts and talents that God has given us to praise Him. He tells us to avoid temptations and be filled with the Spirit so that we can carry out His word. This is especially hard in today's society, and it is easy to give in to these temptations, but it is ultimately important to remember that God is always there for us. Dear God, we ask you to help us use the gifts that you've given us to evangelize your word and give you praise. Help guide us to avoid temptation and sin, and doing so brings us closer to you. Thank you for this opportunity that you've given Gigi and I to share this message with the world and allow our words to help guide those who are listening. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
All right, back to you, Gigi.
All right. Thank you for the verse and the prayer, Raph. It's very weird switching up the order of who's doing what, but
Yeah.
Since I am more well-versed in mainstream music because my family's just very musical, I am taking over this episode as the quote-unquote leader, I guess?
I don't like saying leader. I think it's like, I don't want to say moderator either, but that was the first thing that came to mind. But it's like
the proctor.
The proctor when you're proctoring this recording session. But I think it's just whoever is more knowledgeable in that area. I think is just speaking their truth. So for you, for this episode, it's you.
Yes,
which is good. So take it away.
Thank you, Raph. I'm very excited because I have been thinking about this topic for a very long time. And this has been an ongoing movement that I've noticed in the music industry long before I was born. So, of course, context is key. We're starting off with the history of this topic. And I think the main beginning that I can see this happening is probably like late 50s, early 60s, with the introduction of rock and roll music and kind of the satanic panic, which came later in the 80s, with the music industry becoming kind of more graphic in a lot of ways. A lot more violence. It was a lot more sexualized. And I think that is something that people have been concerned about for a long time. And the Church of Satan actually has a correlation to the introduction of satanic music, because in 1966, the advent of the Church of Satan would occur. And around that exact same time, the introduction of psychedelic music, heavy metal, pop, rock and roll, that's when that big boom in the music industry happened, which leads us into the modern era now, where we have artists like Kanye West performing rituals in front of large audiences at their concerts. And you think about big instances like Astroworld, if you know what that was. It was basically a big musical festival for Travis Scott, in which a bunch of people died. I think there was 2 children and many adults who were killed in a massive crowd. And if you look at the photos and the videos of that certain event, there's a lot of demonic imagery. It's all lit in red. And there's just something very off-putting about the whole situation, and my heart truly goes out to everyone who was affected by that instance, but specifically the people who lost their lives. And you're seeing so many artists having these really ritualistic looking concerts that it kind of makes you shake your head and kind of wonder what is really going on behind the scenes. And so that's definitely having a big cultural impact on how we engage with music. And so this has been an ongoing problem. What have you noticed, Raf? Have you noticed that change and that shift in music to become, much more godless?
Yeah, I think so. It's going with, what we talked in episode 1, like everything becoming, secularized. And with that, everyone's like rebelling against that traditional style type of music. Because like everything before the common times was about,
Yes.
was, like Gregorian chants and, church type music. And when you spring out into, like you said, the 60s and 80s specifically, those were, creating I don't want to say devil's type music, but, a rebellious image that was created through the genres of, rock and roll and genres like that. So I think there's definitely a clear rebellious theme from that. And I think that's Lucifer getting in the minds of the musicians. But I think if we look at what they are saying in the lyrics of, certain music and the theme that is connected with those lyrics, it's very clear that it is very satanic and very away from God, because they didn't want to be included in that stuff as a time. Because at that point, being religious was more popular than it is now, and being that rebellious,
more
secularized era type of people was on the rise. So it's very clear. It is very clear.
Yeah. And I think from the beginning, music, if it did have messaging, it was very subliminal, and now it's just open in plain sight. I mean, you take artists like Doja Cat with the song Paint the Town Red. She literally says in the lyrics, she a devil. Like, they're not hiding it in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of people are like, oh, you're just panicking about this. Like, it's just a funny song. But when we allow this to be more immersed in our culture and allow talk about Satan to be common and to be sung, it gets into your subconscious. And so I just think we have to be aware of that. But it wasn't always this way. Going back to our historical context, I think the first accusation of satanic music that we can think of was the birth of jazz. And from what I've discovered in my research is that it actually has a lot of racist roots, because jazz was considered the devil's music. And the birth of jazz came from key figures and jazz musicians like Louis Armstrong and the Harlem Renaissance, which was really the main birth of jazz that came from a lot of Black artists and Black culture. And, the white prim and proper culture at the time didn't popularize music like that. And so that's really what Raf and I have discovered to be the first instance that we find accusations of satanic music, which kind of evolved into the rock and roll revolution, which also came from Black artists. And the emergence of rock and roll occurred in the early 1950s. And it was popularized in American culture by white musicians like Elvis Presley and the Beatles, who striked a lot of controversy, but also a lot of popularity. And a time that I can think of when the Beatles striked a lot of controversy with religious listeners is when John Lennon, in an interview, said that they're bigger than Jesus Christ. And people were not happy about that. And nowadays, that's like, it would be commonplace to hear something like that just passed on as a joke. And so it really has its roots pretty early on in the 1950s and 60s. Raf, I assume you've also heard about that scandal that John Lennon had.
Yeah, I okay, okay, this is a bit of a story time. Okay, so my dad so
Yeah.
I remember my dad telling me it was like he used to listen to Beatles music all the time, and then that statement came around, and he stopped. And I was specifically remember like they weren't even allowed to go to the Philippines at all because remember from our I think first episode, the Philippines is the only Catholic nation in Asia, and
Yeah.
we have strong faith. And hearing that, I think, was a very insult to culture for us. And so, although the music was good, I mean, like when I listened to Beatles music, none of it was like Black Sabbath type vibes, but it was it was actually like pop music. But just because of the statements and the outside of that, of the recording studio, what the image they had outside of that in that public life, it created a bad taste in people's mouths, and that kind of boosted the impression that rock and roll is, a satanic type genre of music, and it's like worshiping the devil. I think that scenario definitely really boosted its effects of being devilish.
Yeah, for sure. I can also think of the other instance in which Charles Manson, I don't know if you know about this case, Raph. He was a serial killer in the 1970s who wrote Helter Skelter on the wall of the family's home in which he killed the family. And that's a Beatles song. And that also put people in a full-fledged panic about rock and roll music, because at the time the Beatles were the face of rock and roll. They're still the most popular band of all time. Like that would easily make, a concerned Christian mother take away the vinyls and take away whatever form those kids had to listen to that music. I know. What's a vinyl?
I'm just kidding. I know that's not related to the topic today, but it's like no one has vinyls anymore, which is like
hey, I do. I have a record player. It is cool, guys. Get record players. It's fun.
Yeah, get a really good record player. It's not okay. It's not about like the sound quality. Okay, it's about having that collector's item of that vinyl, and you can just sit in your room and listen to it and think about it rather than being on your phone and just popping your AirPods in and listening to whatever. But there's something, it's the vibe that the vibe that is powerful.
That's so the aesthetic. You just feel cool, guys. Like, do it. It's fun. Yeah. And they're cute too.
Yes, they are. I mean, okay. Yeah. Okay, if everyone thinks that it's like one of those the old images where it's like the sound horn where it's like that really old stereotypical record player, it's not that at all. Like, we have upgraded to modern times, trust me. So there are definitely modern record players. I don't know why I was blanking on the word.
Guys, we're Gen Z. We don't know the terms.
But if you know your music, probably the best. Okay, my personal best music experiences are with vinyls and record players. Yeah, just hearing from that. So I digress. That's a little.
I agree.
But yeah, record players.
Yeah, get some record players, guys. We're not sponsored by any record players, but do it, record player companies. I don't know.
Yeah, make some cheaper record players because they're
those things are expensive. I got mine for free.
Oh, lucky. That's the only thing that's stopping me from getting more vinyls is I don't have a record player and they're just so expensive. So
shout out to my friend listening. You know who you are. Thanks for giving me the free record player. Woo!
Yep.
Anywho, getting back on track, guys. So with the rock and roll evolution in the 1950s and 60s, the rise of rebellion being the image associated with rock happened. And that sort of shifts into the 60s with the drug revolution and drug culture and the psychedelic era of music. bands like the Rolling Stones and the Doors, whom I both love. I think that they're great bands, fun to listen to. But it was a counterculture movement in which, drugs were becoming more normalized, especially with the younger generations. And psychedelic music was kind of the newest threat along with rock and roll because, concerned mothers and fathers and the concerned older generations saw all these kids getting into smoking weed and listening to music like this, and this culture of rebelling with using drugs was a huge deal in the 60s. I think everybody can kind of think of the 60s and think of the hippies with, their drugs. And that was definitely part of this satanic music movement, was the psychedelic era. And not necessarily that the movement with music was, satanic lyrics or the music was satanic itself, but the normalization and the use of drugs definitely shifted away from a God-centered culture of the 40s and 50s. And also, along with the psychedelic era came heavy metal, which is the biggest boom of satanic panic, which is what they called it in the 80s, of being panicked about music. And this I actually know quite a bit about because I've got a little brother who absolutely loves heavy metal and hard rock. And in a Catholic household, it's kind of like a funny subject because, my Catholic grandma, she lives right behind us. So she basically lives with us. And she's like, I remember not letting my kids listen to music like that growing up because we thought that it was the devil integrating himself into the culture. And now here's my little Catholic brother who goes to church every Sunday listening to Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and Kiss and all that stuff. And Motley Crue, especially, because their symbol is literally the pentagram. And it's wild. I mean, you had to think that these people in the 80s were like, oh my gosh, like the day of reckoning is coming. Look at all these bands using the devil as their symbol. And the majority of the bands at the time said, we use that for fear factor. It's just creepy. It's a good way to sell. It's a good way to get money. But that in itself, I mean, even if it's just a silly gag or a joke, that's still normalizing Satan and using him to profit, which in my view is very satanic. And so I think that those societal fears were completely warranted. And, that leads us to where we are today with just, I think literally every concert I've been to has something that kind of makes me scratch my head or makes me hold on to my cross necklace a little bit more and just sit there and kind of be like, I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah, Raph, I don't know if you are a listener of rock music. I think we talked about this earlier, but you listen to some of these lyrics and like War Pigs by Black Sabbath, they've got this one line that's like, just like witches at black masses. And my grandma says she remembers hearing that on the radio and like turning off the radio for like a week because she was like, no, it's so bad. And I mean, like, to me, I think that is completely warranted. I don't want to be listening to that and, fueling myself with that type of rhetoric sometimes.
No, yeah, okay, so the rock songs that like I've listened to, it's like it is. I don't get into them because of the lyrics, right? The lyrics are just a side thing that just came. I was like, oh, you just notice it, right?
Yeah.
The music itself, right? You were talking about the guitar riffs, the pounding bass drum. You have like so many elements of music that you are like, oh, that is a really good track, and you're just getting hooked by that. And then the lyrics are either there to set the mood of it, and it either just makes it what the track is, or it just makes it even worse in the context of being more devilish. But I remember when I first heard Paranoid by Black Sabbath. I first heard that, and it was in a movie. So in the context of the movie, that was like, the track itself was really good and really good to listen to. And it was just an unimaginable experience just listening to it the first time. And then you look at the lyrics and you're like, oh shoot, what the heck are they talking about here?
Oh, what is this?
But I was like, when I look at, bands that have the imagery and lyrics that either like ridicule, God and religion, or they endorse the devil.
Yeah.
Endorse the devil. It's like Enter Sandman. Like, they literally start
that's such a good song though.
Our Father, like, during the song, and I'm like, yo, what is this?
What?
But the guitar riff is like, the intro was really good. The intro was just really good. Like, these tracks are really, really catchy and really, really good, that you just lose yourself in the track, and then you're just, as a human trying to process this information, you just get with the lyrics, and you're like, oh, okay. I would say the track itself, it sets the tone, and then the lyrics set the mood of what this track is going, or what the song, I should say, is going to be, and how it will go further into history of, oh, this is a song that has a really good track, and then you listen to the lyrics, which are terrible. But I can assure you, there are definitely people who are music people, a lot more music people than I am. They can list plenty of songs where lyrics are absolutely garbage, and the track is just the only thing that's carrying the song.
So good. Like, and the point of this episode is not to make you afraid or to shame, because it is hard. Like, as a music nerd myself, like, I love music, and more often than not, the lyrics are just like things that I should not be absorbing or listening to, but it's everywhere. And so, like, the goal of this episode is to say, we need more good music that isn't talking about, the ungodly things that you do at an ungodly hour. And like, I think there should be more good quality music and mainstream music that it doesn't even have to be a worship song or a Christian song, but just not full of drugs and, all of the bad things that I will not list on this podcast, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about.
Keep it PG.
Keep it PG here, okay? But yeah, I think it is so hard to kind of escape, because you should be able to enjoy music, but at the same time, the majority of music that you can find nowadays will have something in it that doesn't follow our lifestyle. And there's kind of nothing we can do about it, unfortunately, except push for more music that doesn't have all of that. Because, I want music that I can play in the car with my little brothers that's not going to make them ask questions,
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be explaining all of that. Yeah.
I've definitely had experiences where I get the aux cord for once, and my parents are in the car. And what music do I play? Do I play music with terrible content in them, or do you play something else? So I always play it safe and play worship songs or something like that, or the classics, or the disco age classics that are not rock and roll, but the classics. Those are the only two genres I'll try to expose
That's
them
literally
to.
so real. Like, that is exactly how I feel on a daily basis. Like, I will be in the car with my little brothers, and I'll turn on a song that I love, and then I'll be like, oh, I forget that, like, this swears like every 2 seconds. And I'm like, why can't they make music that I feel good listening to and don't, like, feel good absorbing that messaging and that media, because so much of our life nowadays is absorbing media. We are constantly taking in new information everywhere we go, because that's just the state of the world right now. And the media has such a big influence on our life and our beliefs. And if the media reflects something that is ungodly, then the people are therefore going to be like that. And I'm not saying that everyone has to convert to Catholicism, but I do think that there should be space and there should be room for faithful people to be a part of the media influence. And we have to take that and make that space to share our beliefs and our culture, so that we can have a world where there is peace and there is God. Because what are we without God at the end of the day?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. We are dirt to return to the ground.
We are dust. I mean,
yes.
That's what Adam was.
Yep.
God breathed life into us all.
Yeah. He got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Why? Because of Eve. So you know what the root of all your problems is?
Whoa!
It's the devil. It's the devil.
Okay.
What were you thinking, Gigi?
I was thinking a completely different direction.
What were you thinking, Gigi?
What was Gigi thinking?
We'll talk
just
about
kidding,
it
guys.
after the episode.
Raph loves women. What?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we gotta
women.
keep this in the episode. This is funny.
Okay, right, fine. Per Gigi's request, I will keep it into the episode. So this will be in the episode.
So funny,
man. Gigi, jump into conclusions.
Raph
man.
loves women.
I do love women.
Yeah,
you can quote me on that. I love women.
Okay, Raph.
I mean, there are two important women in my life, I should say. First one, obviously, you should love your mom. So if you don't love your mom, what's wrong with you? And then the second one is, my spiritual mother.
Your wife.
Mother Mary. Okay, yeah, my future wife. Yes, if you're out there, my future wife, and you're listening to this.
If you're out there.
Where are you? I need you right now. Anyway. Anywho.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So continuing on, after the satanic panic of the 1980s, there was this movement that started in 1980 that correlates to the satanic panic of music called Michelle Remembers. I don't know if you know about this, Raph.
Nope.
But in 1980, a book was published that kind of brought forth a series of ritual abuse claims in the music industry. And it was written by a psychiatrist, Lawrence Panzer, and his patient, Michelle Smith, which is where the name Michelle Remembers came from. And it would bring forth allegations developed by religious fundamentalists pertaining to cults and ritual abuse at the forefront of mainstream media. So this is kind of an attack at Hollywood. And I've always kind of thought that Hollywood was sketchy. I'm pretty sure that everyone has. People started to feel as though Hollywood was sort of had this satanic undertone. And, Hollywood is motivated by money, as the majority of the world is, which to many religious people at the time seemed very ungodly. And so Michelle Remembers was kind of the face of this satanic panic in the 80s, or just one of the movements that really seemed to take off. There was also a lot of, I'll just use the term SA, if you know what that means, allegations in Hollywood at the time. And so that was really a big issue because Hollywood and the music industry go hand in hand. And so people not only began to suspect that there were satanic undertones in the music industry, but they were proving it. And they were disgusted with the music industry as a whole. And so it was just a very tumultuous time for music and music producers and singers to kind of find a balance between staying in the public eye, but also not upsetting or fueling this movement that people were creating, which leads to a more calm decade, being the 90s, where hip hop and pop had some explicit lyrics, but it wasn't super outright devilish, and the imagery of Satan kind of left along with heavy metal bands like Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Whitesnake, like all these big heavy metal bands kind of went out of fashion in the early 90s, and so did their satanic imagery. So the controversial themes and explicit lyrics weren't outright about the devil or evil things as a whole. But iconic artists like Tupac, NWA, and other rappers and hip hop artists definitely had, explicit content in their songs. But at that point, that was pretty commonplace, especially after the satanic panic of the 80s. And then pop music also took off in the early millennia. And 2000s pop was a big movement, but it wasn't so outright demonic. And we didn't really see that resurge until recently. But there were a lot of more female artists coming on the scene too. Madonna being in the 80s, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding her that I'm sure the majority of people listening know about. She was just very rebellious, very forward with a lot of things. And in order to keep this podcast PG, just look it up if you are curious. But she definitely kind of broke the glass ceiling and bent the norm and the boundaries for what was expected of women at the time, and kind of this girl power image that I do respect, but also brought forth a lot of bad things too. But she is, an icon in the music industry. So she has done a lot to propel the music industry. Obviously, everybody knows Madonna. But she was very provocative, and that sort of gave her a lot of mainstream success. And so other artists, both male and female, saw that and were like, okay, this is the route to take. And, being provocative brought money. It sells. And people really discovered that in the 80s and 90s. And getting culture shock definitely became a big thing, especially in the 2010s with artists like Lady Gaga wearing her meat dress on the red carpet, a dress made out of meat. Not that that's demonic, but it was like, it's the same idea that doing something out of the ordinary and out of the norm really surprises people and shocks people, and it sells. You get people talking about you, you get the public reception, you get on the newspapers, your name is circulating around. And that's why a lot of people did a lot of provocative things at the turn of the century. And again, going back to media influence, it has such a big influence on the overall culture and our overall lives as just daily people that if, Lady Gaga does something kind of crazy, people who are big fans of her hype that up, and then that becomes more normalized. Raph, I don't know, as another child of the 2000s and 2010s, do you kind of remember like that kind of weird pop aesthetic where it's very loud and bubbly and like kind of that bubblegum pop style where it was just kind of absurd at times? Like, do you remember that era? Like Nicki Minaj and Katy Perry and Kesha?
Yeah, I have definitely seen a lot of how should I phrase this? Now it sounds worse than it actually is, but it's like they've definitely projected images that like you said, did that shock factor of giving them that thrill of seeing them half naked on screen or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Or it is, whoever it was. But I think it was like, I think I consider myself lucky just because my parents, I didn't really see any of that because I was in like, they didn't really expose me to pop culture.
Yeah.
So
I was not very a sheltered child, so I saw all of it. Like, I was kind of aware of a lot of that, but I just wanted to know it from your perspective.
No, yeah, it is definitely eye-opening once you like see the like culture shift. It's like interesting. Like, yeah, when you go back to the 90s, it was like, like being punk and being rebellious. So like I've only been in touch with the 90s type music because of a particular physics teacher that I've been closely related to, that he exposed me to more music. And I remember we would have conversations, about Sum 41 and, Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then we would talk about...
I love them too. Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Man, I can't stop, if you know what I mean. You don't get that reference. But yeah, so you get those, those bands like, Red Hot Chili Peppers and, Nirvana and, those sick tracks that they made and just being, being punked out. And then you get into, like you said before, like Tupac and then, the Notorious B.I.G. and Biggie, and all that stuff, Hypnotized is popular for a reason. So it is that transition from that type of, just being punked out and, just hopping to the beat, if you know what I mean. And so you transition that into the 2000s where you had, Lady Gaga, you had, Nicki Minaj, you had, the Jonas Brothers.
Yes, I love them.
You had the Jonas Brothers, year 3000 is still 900 years away, but it's just weird to be in that time of just, I don't want to say ecstasy, but it's just like you have that, your endorphins are always on because the musicians are creating images and making songs that have, the secular appeal, and that makes us want to hear it more. And the more ridiculous, it's gotten to the trend where the more ridiculous it is, the more views it will get, and the more listenings it will be spread about. And that, that transitions into, today. But I mean, if you ask me personally, I was enjoying my Bruno Mars and much more calmer type music.
Yeah.
During that time, I mean, Bruno Mars still gets little angsty, but
Locked Out of Heaven, probably not the most.
Oh, I was gonna say right away, but it's like, but it's like more calmer type music. I mean, there was definitely that side, that pop side, but also there was like a lot more non craze appeal music that just like talked about life, like Bon Iver. Bon Iver.
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver, as my brother would say. But those weren't really understood at the time. Like in Bon Iver's case, you didn't hear that at the time. It was not popular until years later, after
that 2010s folk dude,
that
like Mumford and Sons. Yeah, like that vibe. Hosier kind of took off around that time too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's once you step outside of pop itself and you go into, your folk and you go into alternative, then that's where you go. That's where they sing about, life and life's challenges rather than talking about, the sex appeal or the different types of events that were happening during that time. I mean, you had, Young the Giant at that time were really talking about, life, going through their crisis in their 20s, which is relatable type stuff. I think I am attuned more to music that I can relate to rather than listening to Firework by, Katy Perry.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, this is like a party theme song. But, just finding music that didn't, have, again, that secular appeal, that didn't provoke any images. It was something you had to step outside what was popular at the time. So, and I think that still translates to today, because the way we've transformed is scary with technology these days. So,
yeah. I also wanted to talk about like the pop girlies of the 2000s, like obviously Britney Spears. Like, how could you not talk about her? Like, she was the it girl. And then also like Christina Aguilera, Avril Lavigne was up there too. They definitely, more so Britney, I think, and Christina as well, pushed definitely a provocative, sexualized image, and it wasn't always them. Like, they were really taken over by the music industry, and you can see Britney now has just been so taken advantage of. And I think that whole movement, along with like television at the time and, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, we're just hearing about it now, but a lot of those young artists were just so exploited by the music industry and by just the media in general. And it was not them. They were sort of used as a pawn in this game. And that really proves our point that the music industry has these motives and ulterior ideas behind the scenes that are really disturbing. And it definitely explains a lot about this satanic imagery that we've been seeing happening for so long. And it's not always the artists themselves. They're a lot of times used as the face of that, which, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but like, there is something about them being used in this kind of game that to me is just so ritualistic and so like, it's really scary if you think about it. And like, there's still so much that we don't know about like the private inner workings of Hollywood in general, but especially after hearing about Britney's story and how she's just been so taken advantage of, and actresses at the time, specifically women, but also men, young women like Amanda Bynes, who was in Disney Channel movies, and I think Nickelodeon as well. And, bigger artists like Ariana Grande have also come out with their experiences of working in Hollywood from an early age and doing both music and acting. And it's really a scary place. And the music industry is just so shady to me. And they know what they're doing. And every day, it seems like they're doing it more in plain sight.
Yeah, it's hard to hear these stories that, when you were a child, you watched these shows and, you still had that childhood innocence of, oh, there's, they're actors, they're living the best life they can, and, they have a lot of money and whatever. But you just really didn't see any of those things. And I think they were afraid to talk about it at that time because they were, children and teenagers themselves, but you just had the underground society of the dark side of Hollywood that you don't really see until you get into the industry. And it is just hard to, combat those ideas. I'm glad that they're talking about it now. But yeah, that era was filled with many different types of cases where they were traumatized because of either the producers or their higher ups were taking advantage of them, and that's just a scary place to be in. And you just have the role that they have in smaller children's lives is huge. I mean, you still have kids today looking up to these stars that they had in their childhood of, Miranda Cosgrove and like those type of people where
Yeah.
are like they didn't know until they shift into the that adult phase of their lives, and they're like, okay, man, that was really messed up what I experienced through, right? It's like you don't even see it until you're told otherwise. You're just ignorant to to reality. So it's just sad and
It is so
crazy that
sad. Yeah.
it has come up to that point. But I mean, you just gotta pray and pray that it doesn't happen again.
You just gotta pray.
So it's just, it's a scary, it was a scary time being masked of the beauty that it was on surface level, but it was just much deeper and darker than anyone thought it ever could have been. So
yeah, for sure. Definitely. I completely agree. It's so much was hidden, especially in my childhood, being a child of the late 2000s. You know, people like Demi Lovato and Miley Cyrus, who went on to go into the music industry after their childhood acting, they've both come forward with just numerous traumas and issues that they've had to deal with because of this industry, because of the music industry. And you'd think that with all of these expositions of the music industry, that they would change. But no. The most recent artist that I can think of that it's like, ooh, this is just like, the devil is here and he's not hiding, is Doja Cat and Lil Nas X. And I do try and think about, you know, the racist roots of the satanic panic when it comes to music. And both of these artists are people of color. And I try not to point fingers at just them, because, you know, I do understand and see that a lot of times the backlash is put on Black artists and Black music culture. But when Lil Nas X slides down a pole to hell, I do have to raise a few eyebrows. I just like it really, there's no need for stuff like that in the media. Like, I don't understand why the evil devil imagery is so cool. I never have. Like, I get it. It probably sells because of a shock factor, but it's like that stuff just doesn't make you feel good when you watch it. You feel disturbed. It makes me feel icky, like thinking about it and listening to it. And I know that not everybody is like, I know that not everybody is like me and not everybody has the same beliefs that I do, but it's inherently evil. That's what Satan represents. And that doesn't make anybody feel good. And then, you know, Doja Cat, she was like dressing up as a demon for a song called Demons in her music video. It's so disturbing. And Paint the Town Red, obviously, is just like every single lyric is Masonic imagery and messaging, and it's just weird. I don't know. I think that it is kind of odd, and this is kind of more of a niche instance that I don't think a lot of people know about, but Doja Cat had a birthday party themed with a movie called Eyes Wide Shut. Don't watch it. It's basically a movie about this satanic cult, and I haven't watched it, but I've done my research on it for this episode, and everybody was like dressing up in masks. And if you look at the pictures of the party, there's just something about it that just really makes your skin crawl. There's just something so odd and off-putting about the whole thing. And yeah, I don't think that anything like that has necessarily innocent intention. I think it's all there in plain sight. And other singers that are kind of smaller than Lil Nas X and Doja Cat, like Sam Smith, who I think is incredibly talented. But like, if you've seen Sam Smith recently, the concerts just insane. Like, it is very obviously demonic, like with devil horns and like the spear. And I get it. It's probably just for shock value. But when we talk about how twisted and gross Hollywood is behind the scenes, you just got to wonder, like, what could be going on and what could this mean? I don't think it's just for fun, or it's just for a joke or for a fear factor.
Yeah, it's really nerve-wracking when you watch those type of videos of them, dancing with the devil, doing other things with the devil that I cannot explicitly say on this podcast. But I remember with the Doja Cat thing, I remember seeing a video of her like reacting to the comments, or like, yo, you're literally like a devil worshiper. And she's like, what do you mean, guys? It's just an act. And I'm like, what the hell? Oh, sorry, excuse me. What
the hell?
What the hell are you talking about? But that is clearly like, there are boundaries and there are lines that you stepped over. Like there are, having lyrics that have the intentions of like the devil and imagery like that is one thing, but then you create a music video that also just like embraces the devil effect of, I want to be cool, so I have to be possessed. Like I remember,
like, what is that?
I remember like you have Manskin, right, with their hit Beggin'. Everyone has heard that song. Okay, that song itself is good. Okay,
it's a good song.
That song itself is good. But then you have their other music, which is like literally they write their songs about sex and being devilish. I mean, they joke that they have sold their souls to the devil, and that's why they have perfect skin. So that is interesting, but it's I think it is a sad reflection of where we are, and it's just tough to see society accept these kinds of ideals. It is hard to speak out against this because you'll get canceled for it. It's really just sad. And like, don't even get me started on like the Met Gala, the red carpets, the
I
Golden
was about
Globe,
to get to the Met Gala.
The Golden Globes, like, I was like, oh, you pull up multiple images of different various celebrities on the Met Gala or whatever, and then you pull up images of Hunger Games, and what do you see? You see the Capitol.
What do you see?
Yo, I swear
we are literally living in the upside down. Yeah.
I literally see, like, oh my gosh, is President Snow going to come out somewhere? Where is he hiding at? But it's just crazy that you have like these ridiculous. Okay. Sorry if this is a hot take for y'all fashionistas, but from ridiculous outfits that they're wearing, it's just like, it is, crazy. I get like like it's your life. You get to wear whatever you want. I mean, if you ask me, you look absolutely ridiculous, but other people's like, oh yeah, he's making a fashion statement. Guys wearing dresses and stuff like that. And I'm like, you can wear whatever you want, but it's like, you have this growing society of people, just actively and, just expressing their image of what they believe in. And we have to accept it all unless it goes against that popular demand of
that mainstream.
That mainstream type of, vibe is like just insane. Just, my gosh, Met Gala. Oh my God, heaven help us.
Heaven help us. Yeah, I was going to talk about that too. The Met Gala is just like I used to love it. I used to watch like all the pretty dresses as a girl, and like then I did more research, and the Met Gala cost $75,000 per person to get in. It's like we are literally living in the Capitol. And I know that there was this movement of like blocking celebrities who went to the Met Gala or something like that. And hot take, I know a lot of you might not agree with this who are listening, but I kind of agree with that, because I kind of agree with the whole movement, because there is so much suffering and pain in this world. And as a celebrity or a public figure, you have the responsibility. You have been given a platform to do something good with it. And it just hurts to see all of these celebrities just, dressing up in these fancy dresses while there are people in this world who can't afford homes, and there's war and there's suffering all across the world. And as time goes on, I'm noticing more of a separation between these elites and the rest of society. And it's kind of like that French Revolution vibe, which is an extreme comparison, but it is, where it's like all of them are inside at the ball while the people on the French streets are hungry. And it's kind of that same image. And I read something about it where it's like, when this happens in a society, there's bound to be chaos. And it's disturbing to see. It just puts a lot on your mind that there is a need for prayer, and there is a need for God in our society. It's a lot to think about. And it's been on my mind a lot, how much our music mirrors our societal changes and tensions, and how the music industry reflects us as a society. And if there's chaos and godlessness in our music, music is such an important part of our life as human beings. And Hollywood it reflects American society in such an intense way. They're so interworked together, especially with the rise of social media, that what goes on behind the scenes in our daily lives is reflected in what goes on behind the scenes in Hollywood, and vice versa.
Yeah, it's just scary. It's a scary future to think about if we just continue down this path of, accepting these images of the devil, and how it's like, how embracing it is cool, or, being included is the fear that makes people want to be listening to these kind of ideals and look at these images. You just have many people just having a reaction of, I don't like where this is going anymore, and I'm tired of doing social media or whatever, because you just see on your feed or whatever of the crazy outfit that this person was wearing, or the crazy statement that this person made, right? You have people who are getting censored or canceled that are against the against the cultural movement at the time, right? You just have many different people that are trying to speak against this, and they are getting shut down because it isn't what they believe in. And it's just really nerve-wracking to see that, because you have other people expressing what they want to believe, and that's 100% okay, as long as it doesn't interfere with pop culture, which is stupid. It's very weird and very counterintuitive to see other people voicing their own opinion about, this is fine, this is okay, but then as soon as you say something else, it's we shouldn't listen to you or whatever. I mean, it's basic First Amendment rights, but it's just sad and depressing.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
Man, this episode took a turn. She got sad like the second half, but it is. What it
I'm
is.
glad we're doing this.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be set awareness. So please just listen to, other type of music that's not this.
Yeah.
And just be more open to the ideals of other things rather than being all devil and being, the sex appeal or the secular influence that these artists have. And I get they're popular and everyone listens to them, but you don't have to be like everyone else. You can, be, I guess, the minority now that is tired of, being imaged like this. I mean, you just don't have to listen to, Christian specifically. I mean, it's a good choice.
Yeah.
It's not dry anymore. You have artists like, Forrest Frank, Holvey, Jake.
Woo, we love him.
We have all these artists that are appealing to, the vibes of, R&B and trying to do all these pop hits that don't talk about sex and the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be biased, but Forrest Frank is doing a great job with his personal stuff. I mean,
he is.
It's really good. It's really good. His album should be out by this episode's release. Go listen to Forrest Frank's album, Child of God. It's really good. You have there are better options out there if you want, if you're tired of this. So to end this on a happier note.
There is so many better options out there.
So much to do that.
And you don't have to throw away, you don't have to completely put away all the music that you do enjoy listening to, because at the end of the day, it's not great to absorb all of that and to be listening to that, but where your faith in God stands, and that you are a child of God. And, sometimes those guitar riffs are they're a little bit hard to stay away from. I have been loving the new artists coming out, like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan, and they sing about sex all the time. And it's it does make me feel guilty, but it's at the end of the day, where your faith stands. That you are strong in God, and your morals. And if that means stepping away from this music, then do it, because I know I have had to put away a lot of artists that they make me feel separated from my Lord. And it's okay to not know how to feel about it, but just keep that in mind, and keep in mind that when you're listening to something, you are subconsciously absorbing what it's saying, and there are better options out there.
Yes, there are.
And there are so many good artists out there that have wonderful music about positive messaging. And it doesn't always have to be totally 100% PG. One of my favorite bands is called Peach Pit. I'm shouting them out right now. They do have explicit songs, but their overall messaging in their most recent album is to give up partying and give up drinking for something better, which is to make music and focus on what really brings them a lot of joy in life, which is making music. And their lead singer stopped drinking alcohol and wrote their most recent album about that. And it's good music. And it's not 100% perfect all the time. And there are some songs that are pretty explicit, but it does have a better message than what a lot of these mainstream artists are pushing. And so there's better stuff out there. And Raph and I both pray for the music industry that we get to a better place.
We see that there are people that are growing against these types of movements, and I think it will continue to grow. I mean, you get up to a certain point where you're just tired of it. I mean, if we've gone so far that we've hated, religion because we've done it so many times, like, well, the same thing's going to happen if we, keep promoting the devil, and, the secular appeal is just going to wash away. And to a certain point where people are just going to come back to more life-oriented type music, where it's about, the problems you have in your 30s or the 40s, or the, problems that we have on, various different stages of our life, right? Heartbreak, there are different types of music that you can listen to that is much more peaceful listening to it. And I get it, I guess it's that expressive, you know what I mean? But you just have, different options out there. So I hope you guys keep that in mind, that you do have different options. God is here. God is here to stay, and he is just waiting. Right. And I've told Gigi this like 1,000 times. God is like, has his arms opened out to us. And it's just, are we willing? Are we willing to go to him or not? And, it may look like in this current age, that's not the case, and I think we're just so blessed to have a God that is so forgiving and will take us no matter what, even if we made, these bad decisions. I mean, you have lots of celebrities that were very, anti-Catholic, but, anti-Christian, very atheist type minded celebrities that are converting to, Christianity. And so there isn't just one thing, right? You can hate something your whole life and then grow to love it. That's just not only prevalent in, modern society, but, you can apply that to other various topics in your life. But just keep in mind that, God is there. God is holding our hand through this, and he will help guide us to what he wants to be done. And, if we keep using, like I said, using our gifts that he's given us to evangelize his word and his message that we are exposed to, then I think we should be in a safe place. So Gen Z, Gen Alpha, future
Gen Alpha,
generation,
if you're listening,
Generation Beta, if you're listening to us in a few years, you guys are the future. So you guys, come on and get something done. It's your generation to do it. It's your generation that's going to change the world if it's going to happen. So it's in your hands. The millennials are too old now. It's in ours too. So
sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry to expose you like that. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like my family's kind of split where there's 2 millennials and then there's 2 Gen Zers. It's
there's
weird.
2 Gen Zers.
Yeah, there's just like
we've got 3 Gen Zers and 2 Gen Alphas. So
it's cross generation. We think are weird. I mean, like my family is just the 15-year age gap does a lot. It's just there's just different music that my brother listens to because he was alive and could recognize the 2000s music, and I was like, I'll just listen to whatever they're putting on, and I'll sing my Jesus Love Me This I Know, and just keep it to myself, or every move I make, what I'm saying, get those like Christian camp vibes. So, but anyway, you just have a brighter future. So
we have the chance to turn this around. And if it all goes to hell, we go to heaven. If the music industry becomes a pile of disgustingness, we don't have to, because we got our Lord Jesus. And with that, I think this closes the episode for today of the Crazy Catholics podcast. And today we covered satanic imagery and messaging in music and pop culture. And most of all, we wanted to make clear that it doesn't have to be like this, and the pendulum can swing, and we can get back to a God-centered society if we do so. And as always, Raph and I are very excited to share our thoughts with you. So make sure to join us for our future episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crazy Catholics Podcast. We really appreciate your support. Please be sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so basically everywhere. And just be sure to tune in for next week's episode. This episode took a lot of time, so it's very exciting. We are really excited for you guys to hear this next episode with our first guest. This person is just a really good example of what we want to talk about, and that's strengthening your faith. And I hope that his story can captivate you all to be better people and live out your faith. So as always, I'm your host, Raph, joined by my amazing co-host, Giada. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember to walk by faith.
Bye.